Good morning, respected organizers and all the delegates present here. My topic is contribution of women to education in India. In recent times, there has been a great interest in the history of women and gender relations in India. The rise of subaltern history has led to a renewed awareness of women's role in history. There is now an exploration of women's texts during this period. Women's voices are very important as testimonies which observe the issue of women's changing social circumstances and relations with men. One such voice was that of Pandita Ramabai. Pandita Ramabai was a pioneer in the field of women's education and reform work for widows. This is the image of Pandita Ramabai. So Pandita Ramabai was one of the major social reformers of 19th century India. Pandita Ramabai was a social worker, scholar and a champion of women's rights, freedom and education during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Recognized as one of India's most influential women reformers, she was the first to promote the welfare and education of Indian widows. Her unique life trajectory spanned across a pan-Indian Orthodox Hindu mold to being part of Brahmo Samaj and Pratna Samaj and further to Christianity. At the age of 30, she traveled widely within India and across the world from USA and UK in the West to Japan in the Far East. Fighting conservatism and marginalization, she set up several projects to empower women, notably the Sharda Sadan in Mumbai and the Mukti Mission in Kedgaon near Pune in Maharashtra. Her early life. So, Pandita Ramabai Saraswati was born as Ramabai Dongre on 23rd April 1858 into a Marathi speaking Chitpavan Brahmin family. Brahmins are the highest caste. Her father, Anand Shastri Dongre, was a Sanskrit scholar. Sanskrit was the language of the Hindu religious texts. He taught her Sanskrit at home. Dongre's extraordinary piety led him to travel extensively across India with his family in tow. Ramabai gained exposure to public speaking by participating in the family's public recitation of the Puranas, that is the Hindu religious texts, at pilgrimage sites across India, which is how they earned a meager living. Orphaned at the age of 16 during the Great Famine of 1876 to 78, Ramabai and her brother Srinivas continued the family tradition of traveling the country reciting Sanskrit scriptures. Ramabai's fame as a woman adept in Sanskrit reached Calcutta, where the Pandits invited her to speak. Pandits were the great scholars. In 1878, Calcutta University conferred on her the title of Pandita, that is a great scholar, and Saraswati in recognition of her knowledge of various Sanskrit works. The theistic reformer Keshav Chandra Sen gave her a copy of the Vedas, that is the most sacred of all Hindu literature, and encouraged her to read them. After the death of her brother Srinivas in 1880, Ramabai married Bipin Bihari Medvi, a Bengali lawyer. The groom was a Bengali Kayastha, which was lower in caste to her, and so the marriage was intercaste and interregional and therefore considered inappropriate for that age. They were married in a civil ceremony on 13 November 1880. The couple had a daughter whom they named Manorama. After his death in 1882, Ramabai, who was only 23, moved to Pune and founded an organization to promote women's education. After Medvi's death, Ramabai moved to Pune where she founded Arya Mahila Samaj, that is Arya Women's Society. It was a society for high caste Hindu women because they were bound by the traditions. So, influenced by the ideals of Jesus Christ, the Brahmo Samaj, and Hindu reformers, the purpose of the society was to promote the cause of women's education and deliverance from the oppression of child marriage. When in 1882 the Hunter Commission was appointed by the colonial government of India to look into education, Ramabai gave evidence before it. In an address before the Hunter Commission, she declared, in 99 cases out of 100, the educated men of this country are opposed to female education and the proper position of women. If they observe the slightest fault, they magnify the grain of mustard seed into a mountain and try to ruin the character of a woman. She suggested that teachers be trained and women school inspectors be appointed. Further, she said that as the situation in India was that women's conditions were such that women could only medically treat them, Indian women should be admitted to medical colleges. Ramabai's evidence created a great sensation and reached Queen Victoria. It bore fruit later in starting of the women's medical movement by Lord Dufferin. She was the first to introduce the kindergarten system of education and also the first to give a vocational bias to school education in India. Ramabai's social and educational work. In 1889, she founded a school for child widows in Pune called Sharda Sadan. In 1896, during a severe famine, Ramabai toured the villages of Maharashtra with a caravan of bullock carts and rescued thousands of outcast children, child widows, orphans, and other destitute women and brought them to the shelter of the Mukti mission. By 1900, there were 1,500 residents and over 100 cattle in the Mukti mission. A learned woman knowing 7 languages, she also translated the Bible into her mother tongue Marathi from the original Hebrew and Greek. The Pandita Ramabai Mukti mission is still active today, providing housing, education, vocational training, etc. for many needy groups, including widows, orphans, and the blind. So on 11 March 1889, Ramabai opened at Chowpatty in Mumbai a widow's home called Sharda Sadan. Sharda Sadan was founded with 2 pupils. In a period of 3 months, the number increased from 2 to 22. At the dedication of the school, a lady had chaired the session. A newspaper stated that this was the first time that an Indian lady had ever presided on such an important occasion. Ramabai went about rescuing the downtrodden and oppressed child widows in society. In her school, they learnt what a decent life was. A child widow was brought to the Sharda Sadan by her father. As a child, she had been taken to live with her mother-in-law, who was cruel to her. The body was often balanced through a ring, suspended from the ceiling as a punishment for the death of her husband. Her father felt sorry for her and took her to the Pandita. She studied and passed matriculation, went to college, and studied up to BA degree. Ramabai, in her writings and correspondence, wrote about several heartrending stories of widows whom she cared for. In November 1890, the Southern was shifted to Pune. Ramabai tried to build up her school in the new environment and endeavored to provide a better life to those under her care. The school was recognized. There were at that time 350 inmates in Sharda Southern. She opened it to women from all parts of India. She purchased property for her institution in Pune, and though the orthodoxy was against her, she had their grudging respect. In April 1894, examinations were held, and 32 students out of 43 were promoted. The first kindergarten teacher was trained in the Sharda Sadan. By the autumn of 1894, she raised enough funds to buy a large plot of land amounting to several acres. Kedgaon, about 40 miles south of Pune in Maharashtra, was chosen for the development of a farm. Here, 100 acres of land close to the railway station was obtained. The people in Kedgaon did their best to discourage her, saying that the land was stony and unfit to build on and that she would get no water. However, Ramabai went ahead. She planted a portion of this property with thousands of orange, lime, and mango saplings. A vegetable garden was made which supplied vegetables to her school. In 1895, Ramabai's school became a high school. In 1896, there was a severe famine in the central provinces and in Gujarat. She launched a massive rescue operation for the famine victims, especially the gullible women. Rescuing these widows and bringing them from central India, feeding and clothing them was an extremely expensive business. In the famine in India of 1897, Ramabai rescued 1,350 girls. Meanwhile, the settlement at Kedgaon was then dedicated to God by the name of Mukti, that is salvation. The girls were happy in their several occupations. All who could learn were taught the 3 Rs. Some went on to the Anglo vernacular standards. Some combined industrial with ordinary education. From the earliest beginnings of the Mukti, its home industries have been one of its best features. All were taught to learn to earn an honest living. Many were trained to be teachers and several were taught to help in nursing the many sick girls from the famine districts. Mrs. Brewer, who served the Mukti mission in its early years, gave a speech in which she extolled Ramabai's achievement. Visitors come from all parts of India and from other countries to visit Ramabai's work. And when they see the extent of the work carried on, the multitude of women, and the splendid organization, the great executive ability of that wonderful woman, who has her hand upon every part of the work, They are greatly amazed and they say that the half has not been told them. The buildings of Mukti are very fine. The school rooms were furnished with American desks, blackboards, and maps, which gave them a fine appearance. There was a thoroughly equipped kindergarten, a competent staff of teachers, and a first class order. There was the old Sharda Southern High School in which there were 165 girls under the charge of Manorama, that is Pandita Ramabai's daughter. Then there was a Mukti school comprising the primary and the grammar grades. The grades were all taught according to the government standard. There was a blind class under the charge of Manorama. Then there was the large boys' school called Sadanand Sadan and an orphanage. Besides, there were the industries and a bakery. The girls were also taught laundry work, cooking, sewing. They learned the art of weaving, and there was a printing establishment as well. In 1904, they had their first government inspection, and it concluded that the management of the school was excellent. Besides the Mukti and Sharda Sadan, the campus at Kedgaon housed the Kripa Sadan, that is a home for women, the Preeti Sadan, that is home for the aged and the infirm, Sadanand Sadan, the home for boys, and Bhatem Sadan, home for blind. Before she died on 5th April 1922, Ramabai had other accomplishments to her credit. Out of the money she earned from the sale of the high caste Hindu woman, she bought scientific models and instruments, published illustrated science textbooks in Marathi, introduced a Braille system of education for the blind, trained teachers for kindergarten schools, and completed translation of the Bible in simple Marathi from the original Hebrew and Greek. Analysis judged by any standards, social, educational, and economic. Ramabai had remarkable achievements, especially when viewed against the background of the times in which Ramabai worked. One extract from an American Ramabai Association report sums up the enormity of Ramabai's work. During the 10 years of her work in the Sharda Sadan, this one woman, reformer, by her silent influence and by her object lessons to the educated young man, showing them the difference between an educated wife of 20 and an ignorant wife of 9 or 12, has done more toward the recognition of the true brotherhood of man and more for the advancement of women, has prevented more demoralizing child marriages and promoted more remarriages with despised widows than have the many reformers, than has the Brahmo Samaj during its entire period of its existence. While her brothers theorize, she practices. Personal life. In many ways, Pandita Ramabai's family life departed from the norms expected of women in her day. Her childhood was full of hardships and she lost her parents early. Her marriage to Bipin Bihari Medhavi crossed caste lines. Moreover, when her husband died after just 2 years, she was left a widow. Under ordinary circumstances, such a tragedy put 19th century Indian women in a vulnerable condition, dependent upon their deceased husband's family for support. Pandita Ramabai, however, persevered as an independent woman and a single mother to Manorama Bai. She ensured that Manorama was educated both in Wantage by the sisters of the CSMV and Bombay University, where Manorama earned her BA. After going to the United States for higher studies, Manorama returned to India, where she worked side by side with Ramabai. Serving first as principal of Sharda Southern, she also assisted her mother in establishing Christian High School at Gulbarga, now in Karnataka, a backward district of South India during 1912. In 1920, Ramabai's health began to flag and she designated her daughter as the one who would take over the Ministry of Mukti Mission. However, Manorama died in 1921. Her death was a shock to Ramabai. 9 months later, on 5th April 1922, Ramabai herself died from septic bronchitis a few weeks before her 64th birthday. Conclusion. Pandita Ramabai was awarded the Kaiser-e-Hind Medal by the Government of India for community service in 1921. In 1989, a postal stamp was released by the Government of India commemorating 100 years since the commencement of Ramabai's work. Ramabai's death on 5th April 1922 was a national loss. One of the leading newspapers of India, the Times of India, published the following tribute in their newspaper. The name of Pandita Ramabai ought to have a high place among the makers of modern India. She represented the awakening of Indian womanhood and she voiced with persuasiveness and courage the demand of her gender for a richer and fuller life than the prejudices of the past permitted. Pandita Ramabai's story is one to uplift everyone, whether he be Hindu or Christian, who accounts the soul of man the most precious of all things. The Mukti mission still lives on and continues the legacy of Pandita Ramabai. The Indian government, in its drive for literacy, provides wide opportunities for female education, like the provision of free education for the girl child up to the 12th standard. Everywhere, women now take an active part in the affairs of the nation. To a great extent, the initiative and influence of Ramabai helped to bring about the changes that have made India so great and progressive. Now, recently we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and India has been one of the hardest hit countries by COVID-19. Beyond a staggering impact on human life, COVID-19 has greatly disturbed access to education in India, with 247 million primary and secondary school students out of school. In the pandemic, again the situation went back as far as education is concerned. The COVID-19 impact was everywhere, which resulted in the closure of schools and educational institutions. Though schools were closed, students were attending classes through online classrooms. But there are lots of students who didn't own the resources to attend the online classes. Many students struggled to obtain the gadgets required for online classes. The COVID-19 has affected a large number of students across states, class, caste, gender, and region in India. The shutting down of schools and the decision of shifting traditional classrooms to digital platforms is not increasing learning inequality among children, but also pushing a large number of children out of school due to the digital divide. Other than learning, the absence of schooling would also have a long lasting effect on the health and nutrition of children. But whatever any situation, any century, any era, we can work, we can bounce back like Pandita Rama. These are the references. These are some of the images. This is the postal stamp issued by the government of India. This is Pandita Ramabai, Manoramabai, and European workers and friends. This is Ramabai at work on her translation of the Bible into popular Marathi. This is a Mukti Fellowship of Christian Young Women organized by Miss Mary Birkin, who is seen on the right. And thousands of meals served every day at the Mukti mission. Famine struck several times, bringing the mission tremendous hardships. Thank you all for patient hearing. Thank you.